Alright, what's going on everyone? Today we're going to take a look at the most powerful budget deck in Modern. Modern is a format that is kind of scary to get into at the moment, with everyone's attention on Pioneer and fears that Modern might be a dying format, or not dying, but a becoming the next legacy, technically not dead, but also good luck finding a game, something like that. You might be a little bit skeptical about investing in a deck in the Modern format at the moment. Makes total sense. But what if your LGS only offers Modern tournaments? What if your local store hasn't fully adopted Pioneer yet? Well, fortunately, this might be the perfect deck for you. Which deck am I talking about? I'm talking about Mono-Red Blitz. In a format that typically costs $800 to $1,200 to build a tier 1 deck, Mono-Red Blitz typically runs about $100 to $200. And I know that can still be a little bit high for some people, but it's not really that bad for a non-rotating format. Plus, you can cut the budget down even more by replacing some sideboard cards. For example, the deck that I'm looking at plays a Leyline of the Void, which makes up $36 of the deck's $200 cost, bringing the total deck cost down to $164 just with Leyline of the Void. Now, typically when you think of budget decks, you think of bad, janky, unreliable, casual decks that don't have any real competitive chops. Well, this deck has top 8 GPs, regularly wins and top 8 PTQs, and is a real legitimate competitive deck. You are sacrificing power here. This is a good deck. This is a competitive tier 1 deck that you could buy for less than the price of 2 Mox Opals that I need in my tier 1 affinity deck. 2 Mox Opals for my affinity deck would cost at the moment about $190. So for the price of 2 Mox Opals, you can build an entire deck that's pretty much on the same playing field. It's just as competitive, just a whole lot cheaper. So let's take a look at the deck. It starts out by doing a fantastic imitation of a burn deck by playing Lightning Bolt, Lava Spike, and Burst Lightning. The Bolt and the Spike deal 3 damage each, and Burst Lightning either deals 2 damage or 4 damage depending on how much you pay for it. 2 damage for 1 mana, 4 damage for a little bit more if it's late in the game. So yeah, it looks like a burn deck, right? And in some ways this kind of is a burn deck, just not exactly, because this deck isn't going all in on burn. This deck looks to capitalize on playing these burn spells with cards like Monastery, Swift Spear, and Soul Scar Mage. Both of these have prowess, which is to say they get +1/+1 whenever you cast a non-creature spell, like burn spells. The Swift Spear has haste, and the Mage has the added benefit of turning your burn damage into permanent -1/-1 counters. But you can see how fast this deck can be, right? Imagine playing a turn 1 Swift Spear, attacking for 1 since it has haste, and then the following turn you cast Lightning Bolt, deal 3, cast Lava Spike, deal 3, and then you're attacking with a 3/4 on turn 2, right? Pretty crazy, hence the name Mono-Red Blitz. It's super fast. To further take advantage of prowess, the deck also plays Lava Dart. It only deals 1 damage for 1 mana, but it has flashback, so you can cast it twice for 1 mana, because the flashback cost is sacrificing a mountain, and you can sacrifice the same land that you tapped to pay for the first spell. So you tap a mountain, deal 1 damage, sacrifice that mountain, deal another damage, and that's 2 prowess triggers. And if you have multiple prowess creatures, if you have multiple Swift Spears, if you have multiple Soul Scar Mages, then that 1 to 2 damage turns into 5 to 7 damage pretty quick with just a single mountain. And sacrificing a mountain isn't too big of a deal in this deck because, as you've seen so far, most of the spells are very, very cheap. Most of your spells cost 1 to 2 mana, most of them. It also plays Crash Through and Manamorphose, and these are also designed to trigger prowess. Crash Through is 1 mana to effectively draw a card, and it also gives all your creatures trample, so you can, crash through the opponent's blockers. Manamorphose is 2 mana to draw a card, and you add 2 mana to your mana pool, meaning it's just a free way to trigger prowess. You tap 2 mana, you spend your card, but then you get another card, and you get 2 mana back anyway. So it's basically free prowess trigger. So both of these allow you to, make your creatures really big while churning through your deck and, just drawing and giving things trample, drawing more cards, getting free mana, that sort of stuff. Finally, the deck also plays to light up the stage, which costs costs 3 mana, but it only costs 1 if you have Spectacle active, and it allows you to dig for more cards. You exile the top 2 of your library, and then you can cast them until your next turn. Important note there, it's not until the end of this turn, it is until the end of your next turn. So you will get to untap next turn and have a chance to cast those spells, and if there's any lands, you can play those too. So yeah, pretty cool. You can see what this deck is doing. Play prowess creatures, and then draw and burn your way to victory. Just, have a Soul Scar Mage, have a Swift Spear, and then bolt, draw, Manamorphose, crash through, burn some more. Things are massive. Kill the opponent, preferably turn 3 or 4 at the latest. That's the idea. The deck also plays a couple more payoffs for playing spells, but it does vary from deck to deck. The one I'm using for this video plays 3 Runaway Steamkins, which gets a +1/+1 counter whenever you cast a spell, until it has 3 counters, that is. It can also remove these counters to add mana. So this plays 2 rules. First off, it allows you to build a big creature without needing to constantly churn through spells with the prowess creatures, since once it's big, it stays big. But it also provides a mana source so you can churn through more spells. If you remove all the counters, and then you can play through like Manamorphoses and crash throughs and maybe a burn spell or 2, it's going to get all of its counters back anyway. And then if you have more gas, then you remove the counters again, and then you start casting your spells and drawing more cards and stuff again. You have crash throughs, you have Manamorphoses, you have light up the stages, so you can just outright win if you have a team of prowess creatures, and if the opponent has no blockers, you can just churn through spells with the help of Steamkin, make your creatures massive, fling a ton of burn spells, and just, trample over the opponent. Pretty cool. And even if your opponent does have blockers, you can burn them off in the process of going through all of this. So yeah, not bad. The deck also plays Bedlam Reveler. It costs 8 mana to cast, but it costs 1 less mana for each spell in your graveyard, which as you can tell is usually a lot. So this can very frequently cost just 2 mana for a 3/4 with, once again, prowess, so it's going to get bigger with the rest of your creatures, and it also allows you to draw 3 more cards when you play it, filling your hand with more gas to win the game with. Pretty great. You do have to discard your hand when you cast it, but you always just cast it when your hand is empty. You get a 3/4 for like 2 mana. It has prowess, and then you draw 3 cards, filling your hand with gas so you can trigger that prowess. It's not uncommon to play Bedlam Reveler, draw a couple burn spells, and then the following turn you might burn off some of your opponent's blockers. The Bedlam Reveler itself is like a 5/6 at that point, and then you attack for 5 at the very least, and possibly more if you have other prowess creatures or Runaway Steamkin. It should be noted that some decks also play Blister Coil Weird and Kiln Fiend as additional ways to capitalize on spell slinging. Not every deck plays these, in fact most decks don't, but I thought it was worth mentioning. You might notice these from Pauper if you play Pauper. There's an Is It Blitz deck that plays these, and they're okay in Modern, a little slow. Monastery Swift Spear and Swift Scar Mage make a lot more sense, but some decks do play these, so worth noting. And then the final card in the deck is Risk Factor, which forces the opponent to either take 4 damage or let you draw 3 cards. Neither of these choices are good choices, so it's pretty much a win-win for you, because if they take the 4 damage, not only are they taking 4 damage, but also you're triggering prowess, or they let you draw 3 cards, and you're just going to draw, more burn spells and more ways to trigger prowess, so it's pretty good. It's pretty good no matter what. This is another card that not every deck plays, but this specific one that I'm looking at does play a single copy. So the mana base in this deck is very simple. It plays just 18 lands, 15 of which are basic mountains and 3 fiery islets. Now, the reason it plays the islets is this deck really doesn't want to get mana flooded. That's why it's only playing 18 lands. It only needs a couple, 1 or 2, and it can definitely get by on that. Plus it's drawing cards with, Manamorphose and whatnot. So this deck does not want to draw a bunch of lands. So it's really trying not to, and fiery islets allow us to, if we do get flooded, we can sacrifice a land to draw a card if we're really, really desperate for it. So yeah, it's just, we don't need a lot of lands. Fiery islets are there to draw cards. Now, I will say they are expensive. So if you want to budgetize these, then the cycle lands might be better. They do come into play tapped, which is really, really not what you want to do in this deck, because you're trying to go so fast. You do not want to be playing tapped lands, but it is a budget option for now if you really want to play this deck on a budget to start with, and then you can upgrade to better lands after you've got some games with it. If you do cut the Horizon lands, you're cutting the price down by about $25 to $30. So that cuts the price down of this specific deck down to $170. And then if you cut the Leyline of the Voids in the sideboard, that brings it down to like $130. So yeah, you can get this deck pretty low on cost by just cutting a couple cards, making it a little bit inefficient, but still pretty good. Also, you can literally play any Horizon land in this slot. The reason most of them play blue-red is just to throw the opponent off. You see a blue-red land, you don't necessarily think it's going to be an aggro deck, but any of the the red Horizon lands will be fine. Now moving on to the sideboard, it has Shattering Spree and Abrade for artifacts. Abrade can also burn creatures, of course. It also has Dragon Claw for burn mirrors or just any kind of burn deck, any other aggro deck, whatever. Shrine of Burning Rage to combat counterspell heavy decks. Kozilek's Return is the board sweeper that conveniently doesn't kill any of our creatures, because if we play it we trigger prowess and then it doesn't kill our creatures because they all have 2 toughness, so they'll go up to 3 when this resolves. And then Leyline of the Void for graveyards. So like I mentioned, there's another opportunity to reduce the budget with the sideboard here. Leyline of the Void is the most obvious. It's making up about $35 to $40 of the budget. I checked it right before recording this. It was like $36 for 4 of them. So, you know, it's in that area. And without question, it's the best graveyard answer in the format. Leyline of the Voids are great against, you know, Dredge and Crabvine and stuff like that. But if you are really desperate to reduce the budget, there are plenty of cheaper alternatives that will be, you know, good enough for Friday Night Magic and whatnot. So yeah, without question, Leyline of the Void, great. But, you know, you can use one of these budget cards and it'll be fine. And you can always upgrade to Leyline of the Void if you're finding that you really need it. And you can also swap out Shattering Spree, by the way, for Bi-Force. Shattering Spree makes up like $8 to $10, and Bi-Force is a bulk like 25-cent card. So yeah, you can cut another $10 there, and that's reasonable. Like, that's fine. So yeah, there's ways to bring this down a bit. So I'll leave a link to this exact list that I'm looking at on MTG Goldfish, but I'll also leave a link on Tapped Out on my Tapped Out account to a budget version of this where I'll cut Leyline of the Void probably in the Horizon land maybe, and I'll try to bring it down to like $100 or so, maybe a little bit less. But yeah, at the end of the day, this deck is a legitimate competitive modern deck that you can build for super cheap. I mean, $100 can seem like a lot of money for some people because not everyone wants to spend that much on a deck. But if you're playing competitively and if you are really interested in, you know, getting into competitive Magic for as cheap as possible, it doesn't get better than this. This is the cheapest competitive modern deck in existence right now. I really mean it when I say that this is the most powerful budget deck in modern. There isn't a deck that's this powerful and also this cheap. I mean, obviously, if you want the best deck in modern, by all means, go buy Tron for like $1,000. That's fine. And also, if you don't want to spend, you know, $100, by all means, you could build like a $40 to $50 or $20 budget jank deck. But in terms of having the best of both worlds, in terms of having a deck that is capable of taking down the GP and also not $1,000, this is it. It's pretty great. If you're looking for the most powerful budget deck in modern, I think this is it. So there you go. Yeah, anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope this video was helpful, and I will see you in the next one.